There's a reason I think so many people love home renovation shows. In our household, we love Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines from Waco. Because you start with a house that looks tired and outdated and maybe a little rough around the edges. And then you get to the best day ever, which is demo day. You get all your anger out on the walls that you're taking down as you create an open floor plan. And then you put these beautiful new floors that you agonized over. You put these new floors in, and you replace the cabinets, and you do that fresh coat of paint that just brightens everything up. And then at the end of the show is the big reveal where it all comes together to be this one big, beautiful masterpiece, this place you get to now call home. And if you watch enough of those shows, you learn something. That the most dramatic moment is not when they pick the tile, it's when they discover a foundation problem, which almost every single episode there's a foundation problem of some sort. Because if the foundation is shifting, suddenly none of the cosmetic stuff matters. Fresh paint can't fix that. New countertops can't solve that. Beautiful furniture can't carry the weight. If the foundation is compromised, eventually everything feels it. When you go to close that door and it won't latch anymore. Walls begin to crack and floors begin to slope. That what is underneath matters more than what's on top. And Jesus says in our gospel that life works like that too. He tells a story about two builders. These two people building two homes. And they both get the same storm. And in the midst of that storm, one house stands and one house falls. And the difference is not who decorated better or who had a better interior designer. And it's not who looked more successful. It's not who was the stronger builder. It all comes down to the foundation. Now, here's what I think is one of the most critical parts of this story. Jesus says the rain fell on both houses, that the wind blew on both houses, that the waters rose and flooded both houses. Both houses faced the storm. And that matters because sometimes people carry the idea that if life gets hard, I must be doing something wrong. Maybe I failed, or maybe I didn't pray enough, or maybe God's mad at me for something I did once in my life. But Jesus says otherwise. He says storms are a part of life. They are not proof of weak faith. Storms are not punishment. Storms are not always preventable. That storms are just a part of life. And some storms hit suddenly, like that phone call that came out of nowhere, the diagnosis that changed everything, the job loss that came out of nowhere. While other storms can build slowly. Stress that keeps piling up, grief that lasts longer than we expected, and anxiety that hums in the background day after day after day. Some storms arrive all at once, and others are building on the horizon for weeks, waiting for their turn to attack. But storms come, and when they do, the question isn't how strong am I, it's what am I standing on? It's where Psalm 46, the first reading that we had, it meshes so beautifully with our gospel story. It says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Not a distant help, not an occasional help, but a very present help. We talked about it last week as we were looking at Psalm 23, that God is with us in the presence of the darkest parts of our lives. And then we hear, though the earth should change, and it does. Though the mountains shake, though the waters roar, though everything that once felt stable begins to move. That God is our refuge and our strength. And that's not a theory, it's a promise. It's a promise in the midst of chaos. It's a promise in the midst of the storm. Notice what the psalm does not say. It does not say faithful people will never feel the earth shake. It does not say believers never hear the waters roar. It says, even there, God is with us. Even there, God is our refuge. Even there, God is our strength. That is the promise, that even there, God is with us. Jesus talks about sand and rock. Sand is anything that looks strong on the surface, but over time can't handle the weight. Megan stole my example from earlier, but if you've ever built a sandcastle, if you've ever gone to the beach, you could be the best engineer in the world. And you can spend hours designing and building the perfect sandcastle. You can even have a moat to direct water around it, but at some point the tide will rise. And at some point the water will chip away at the sand or little tiny rocks, and it'll chip away at it, and it'll chip away at it, and eventually it all comes crumbling down. Approval can be sand. Always seeking the approval of others, that our decisions, that our actions, in order to gain approval from others, that can be sand. It can work for a little while, but at some point it can't handle the weight. Success can be sand. If we design our lives to be successful and to do things the best possible, it's not that that's wrong, but it can't handle the weight of the world. Even our own strength can become sand if we feel like we have to carry everything on our own. These things can look sturdy for a season, they can feel dependable for a while, but at some point, when the rain comes, when the wind blows, when the water and the flood rises, the wall comes crumbling down, and we discover what can and cannot hold. And then there's the rock. I often think of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for this. Anybody know who that is? Wrestler, big Samoan guy. He's in so many movies too, but I'm a big wrestling fan, so that's what I think of. God's not calling us to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, although he could probably hold the weight on his shoulders for a little while. But the rock is not your ability to manage everything on your own. The rock is not your perfect track record or your emotional toughness. The rock is and always will be Christ. The rock is the love of God that does not shift when circumstances do. The rock is grace that holds when your strength gives out. The rock is mercy that remains when your plans collapse. The rock is the promise that you belong to God in life and in death. And part of that rock and foundation that's being built with God and through God is the people around us. That your friends and your family and your church, that is part of your foundation. That is part of building a life on rock. Those people who pray with you when you don't know the words to say. Those who sit alongside you in your grief. Those who remind you who you are when the storm dares take that away from you. Because faith was never meant to be lived alone. I experienced this firsthand about 7 years ago when I was first diagnosed with depression. I thought I could do it all on my own, and I got really good at fake it till you make it. And it wasn't until several years later that it all finally came crumbling down. My depression got to this point of being crippling, where just getting out of bed each day was a celebration. I found myself retreating and isolating and pulling away from my family, my friends, my church. And it became abundantly clear like something had to be done. And thankfully, I had built a foundation where the church granted me some time away. My family was willing to allow me to go and get the help that I needed in that season. And it's only because that foundation was there. They had every reason to leave me alone and to abandon me, but yet that foundation was there through it all. A season that I'll always be grateful for. And it was a season that, like, as I look back on it, it was abundantly clear I was being held by God, sometimes directly and sometimes indirectly through God's people. Some of you came in this morning in the midst of a storm. You're holding on to anxiety. You are tired. You are trying to carry burdens no one else can see. You too are trying to fake it until you make it. And so I hope you hear the good news today that you no longer have to be the rock. You don't have to hold everything together. You do not have to save yourself by your own strength. For Christ is the foundation. Christ is our refuge. Christ is our very present help in times of trouble. And Christ is the one who holds. Because the rain will come, the wind will blow, the floods will rise. But the love of God in Jesus Christ will not fail you. It has not failed you, and it will not fail you. So when the storms come, know you are not standing alone. You are standing on something deeper than fear, stronger than circumstance, and steadier than your own strength. You are standing on grace. You are standing on Christ. You are standing on a firm foundation. And that firm foundation will not move. And for that, we give God thanks and praise. Amen.